Question the Deaths of Vic Sage, issue 2. So Jeff Lemire writing with Dennis Cowan on the art. This is... So we ended the last issue with, like, it was like Question was being put back in time, either whether he's physically traveling back or if he's just getting into the memories of a previous, incarnation.
He's tripping balls.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing.
Way of putting it.
And this story here doesn't really, like, address how he connects to this. I mean, we assume that he's kind of reliving this.
At the end, it feels like it kind of implies there was a dream for him.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, no, because the ending's not in present day, or present day as to what the first issue was. It's still in the past. It's a different time period.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
It goes. We're going through what it means to be the Question. I feel in different time periods.
Yeah,
because now.
Because obviously this story, for the most part, this issue is set, before the turn of the century. It's 18 something.
Old West.
Yeah.
It's 1886. Tells you on the very first panel.
Yeah, and then and at the ending when he wakes up, it's not back to the 80s or whatever it was when we left. In the first issue, it's like 1940 something. Yeah. So we're doing so. This is the Old West story. The next issue, assuming it continues from where this one leaves off,
noir detective story.
Is the noir one? Yes. So interesting stuff there. So does anyone have? So one of the weirdest things about this issue is that the name that he's using, because obviously it's revealed at the end or towards the end that his first name is Charles, but the name that he's using throughout this issue is Victor Zsasz, and I couldn't help but feel that is, some spelling perhaps aside, very similar to another character in the DC universe.
No, I'm with you, especially early on where it teases him with the axe, and I was like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, so I looked this up because of the name. So the name's Hungarian in origin, right? And we have a friend who has a Hungarian last name that I've had to ask how to say it, right? Right, and so. I looked up pronunciation of this, and that the S and the Z make an SA sound, right? So it's not Zaz, it's Saz, which I know sounds the same, but we're differentiating.
But
that's different.
But there's an intent. I mean, this is clearly intentional to make us think of it, though, because otherwise you wouldn't put Victor in front of it. The fact that Victor's put in front of it makes me think, well, this is clearly he wants me to think about Zaz. He wants me to think about the Batman villain.
Yeah. He definitely wants that on your mind. I think that's why I say I think it plays with that, because it gives him the axe, and and then you hear the name, and you're like, oh, is something going to happen? And then of course there is a horrific looking murder, and it crosses your mind, right, because of that name. Yeah.
So the story here is about he's in a small town and he encounters this black man who's been refused service at the local hardware store, and he kind of buys the axe for him and gives it to him outside. But because of this, the black man and his family, his wife, get attacked in the middle of the night, claiming that the priest and someone else says, "Oh, we saw you, leave this man. The store owner from earlier is dead, and he's got an axe in his back." And all these witnesses lying, saying they saw him do it. So our boy Zaz comes out and helps, has a bit of a heroic moment, and they sort of leave the town. And it's quite a dark story because both the man and his wife do end up being killed when the priest and these men kind of ride out after them and take some shots. And then ultimately...
It's one of the things that early on it feels like she got fridged. But then, when he goes as well, it becomes...
So they both got fridged.
Yeah.
But I think... Well, I mean, in the context of the female character who had like 2 lines before this, who got shot in the face, and it was like, okay, that was, kind of felt awkward in that sense. But then he goes as well, so it kind of evens out.
Well, yeah, it's the price of him doing good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But anyway,
there's a sacrifice.
So what happens here is that this other woman shows up, saves his ass from everyone else, and she is looking for the chosen one, or however she phrases it, for the Charlie. There's someone called Charlie who she took this shaman job from the previous dude, and he was like, "Oh, there's going to be a Charlie," and eventually he admits that his first name is actually Charles. and that's kind of what leads to this. And it gets a bit trippy at a couple of points where he's kind of like stumbling about, and then ultimately, as we see, he wakes up in the 40s and he's like, "Oh, that was a weird dream." And it bookends with the book, because the start of the book sort of has him waking up saying, "Oh, that was a weird dream." And we don't necessarily know what he was dreaming about the first time, but
the question is, was the first time the present day one that we saw before, or was there another one before this in the timeline?
Right.
Probably more likely the latter, I'd say, and the idea that he's living through all these different stories, and that's why each one's feeling like a memory of like each one's like oh, that felt like a dream, the one that I just had, and he's moving through time, experiencing them all. That'd be my guess based on what they've shown us so far, but
I kind of like the idea of the circular nature of the kind of quote unquote present day one being the, oh, that was a weird dream, to this guy in the Old West.
Yeah, well, time's a flat circle, right? Like, and that's here. And well, so I said earlier what it means to be the question, and I feel like in that first issue we saw what it meant for him in that time period of him being the news anchor, but also going in and busting heads when he needs to, and the division of black and white, like for moral sake, right? And then here we have him doing kind of the same thing, but what he's up against here with the townsfolk and the pastor, because we find out that the pastor is actually the great evil that he's meant to take down, and that the great evil takes many different forms. And so here, Lemire never just writes a simple superhero story, right? There's always layers. And here I feel in this issue is while we always get like the black and white with the question, and how he inspired Rorschach. With here, it's he's on the opposite side where no, there's a clear black and white here. It doesn't matter what this priest or pastor is, right? Who's supposed to represent good and morals here, when he's the one that's whipping them all up. Is like, that this might be the law, but the law can be corrupted, right? And that he's not going to stand by and let, just because it's the law, he's not going to let them enforce an unjust law.
Yeah, well, you were kind of hinting at something there before that when you said how he's kind of doing the same thing in this time period. And he actually is, if you actually think about what he's doing, he's essentially, when he stops to hang, he's trying to explain to everyone what's really going on. He's trying to spread the truth, which is essentially what he's trying to do as a news anchor in the 80s. So there's definitely some similar vibes, and how in each,
you could already see how that plays into the noir detective.
Yeah, how each period he's going to do something different, but he's essentially trying to accomplish the same things in each time period. It also mentions. But I
also feel like as the further he goes, the more complex it gets, and that's why I feel like in the modern day there's going to be more of the shades of gray, because of in the first issue, if you remember, the lady that's also that he knows, I can't remember exactly her story, but she's the sister of the guy that gets busted.
Yeah.
And she tells him it's not exactly what he thinks it is, right? But he goes off on his own way because he's his own
crusade.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like in each one, the earlier that we go, it's a little bit more simple. Here's like, no, the townspeople are racist. They're running this guy up. He didn't do anything wrong. And, Charlie ends up paying the price ultimately for doing good. And I feel like in the 40s one that we're going to go, it's going to get a little bit more complex, but still there's black and white, good and evil.
That makes sense.
The great evil over, right? And then now in the modern day, it's a lot more complex, and the great evil is not going to be exactly who we think it is. And I feel like I've read enough Lemire to know that's where it's going, but I'm also excited to see if that's where.
Lemire is a master of telling the same core idea of a story repeatedly, and always still knocking it out of the park and making me want to read the next take on it.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well that the version in the Old West here, like he mentions that he was part of like the squads that would go and kill the Native Americans. So he has a lot of guilt. He has a lot of like sort of stuff to redeem himself for, which is why he's perhaps he is such a hero in the context of this story, because he's trying to fight for redemption. He regrets his past actions.
He's haunted by what he did, and he can't take that back, but he can make it better now. He doesn't have to let it keep happening. And there's that cycle again here. He's not going to let it keep happening. He's going to change it. But yeah, I never thought I wanted to see an Old West Question before, because Question's not a character that I'm like super stoked on. But he fits in the Old West. And like if we got the Old West Justice League kind of story, they do that Justice Riders, like give me the Question interacting with Hawkman, right?
Yeah.
Like, of that era.
I think Cowan's art really suits as well. I think it's even though his style is not changing here, I think his style suits both the noir 40 stuff that we're going to get and also this Old West. Like that double page spread of him on the horse, kind of going through with the guns, I think is fantastic for this art style. And yeah, I can't wait to see this in the the hard-boiled noir stuff.
Yeah, his art here is really good. There's a lot of the arrows through the faces and all that kind of stuff. The colouring from the gun blast being really warm and orange versus the cold sort of nighttime behind it. Really nice stuff. Honestly,
it's such a scratchy style, isn't it?
My only complaint with the art is that. And actually, it's worth mentioning when he's walking through the desert and he's kind of hallucinating, he does kind of see a city, like a modern city in the distance at one point. So I think that's kind of the idea of like the transition to the new time period, kind of almost like in his psyche.
Seeping in, and there's the question mark in blood. Yeah.
I will say though, some of the art during this section, even though some of it looks great, there's the odd panel where I get that it's doing kind of like a it's like kind of almost trippy look where it's meant to be a bit more weird. I don't know if I like it when it goes more, because I think his style by its nature's already got this kind of rough, scratchy feeling to it, which is fine. But when he intentionally makes it more weird than it naturally is.
Are there any panels in particular you could point out that you didn't really enjoy in this regard?
I'm just looking through this section now.
Because there's a lot of like the ideas of the question mark smoke going on at this point as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it was basically when they first. It's probably just before he hallucinates. Actually, there's a couple of times where like hold on, I'll tell you where. There's a 9-panel grid, when he's talking to the woman, and it's just the legs and the body shape and just the way everything is there. It's more in the bodies rather than the faces. It feels a little bit less defined than a lot of the rest of the book. When we get to the big moments later on, when he's got the question mask on again, but he's still got the cowboy hat on, that stuff looks great. It's just when he's drawing full body forms at a wider shot when they're in smaller panels that I think it looks a little bit weird. But then you have pages where he's like dual wielding pistols on a horse and the question mask, and it looks fantastic.
Phenomenal, yeah.
Yeah. So again, minor quibbles. It only affects maybe a few pages.
It's few and far between. I understand where you're coming from. I think generally speaking, the art really suits the style that it's going for and the atmosphere of the time period. Yeah.
Also, it's worth mentioning because I assume this great evil is going to be traveling through time with him as well. He's going to encounter him multiple times.
I would assume so. Yeah.
Because it has that bit with the note where he's the man with no face, and then the villain's the man with 1,000 faces. It's kind of a nice contrast between them. Where the villain's constantly changing his face, and the question just doesn't have one.
Who is the villain? It's the idea. The villain is everyone, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that'll be end with him looking out at the city. And come back for book 3 of 4. Right? There's 4 of these.
Yes.
So really neat. I've never read a question book before. On its own. So I'm digging this.
Yeah,
up to this point, my question was Renee Montoya in 52.
I think that applies to all of us, actually.
Yeah, right. But the question, I'm definitely this book, Lemire's question, I'm definitely in on because the way that he's telling the story.
But so that's the question, the deaths of Vic Sage issue 2. Matt, what are you giving it?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Connor, what are you giving it?
Yeah, 0.5.
I'll also give it the 8.5. Yeah. I think all three of us considered the 9, and I thought about it and went, man, not quite that amazing, but great, really great.
Yep.
Yeah.